Many small business owners don't understand that when they're doing their pricing, they're forgetting a very key component to the entire thing. And this key component, actually, if you're forgetting it, is costing you thousands of dollars a year in profits. And I want to walk through that with you today and show you how you can start using this key component to make more money. Hey, badass business owners, my name is Tammy, and I'm here to help you grow your business, but more importantly, make more profit in your business. And today, we're going to take a look at pricing. Last week, I did a combination. We were talking about your profit and loss, and I kind of used a little bit of me talking to you as well as going to the computer to show you some examples. So we're going to do the exact same thing today. We're going to talk about pricing, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples where when you're looking at your pricing and this one key component and how impactful it is on ensuring that you are as profitable as you could possibly be. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and take a look at an example of a business and how they're doing and how it ties into their pricing. And then we're going to show you how it's going to help you just as much. All right, with that, let's go on over to the computer. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start over here and want to start with the number one calculation that you're always hearing me talk about, which is sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals your profit. And this is how your profit and loss flows, which you learned in the last episode when you were watching that one. And it's going to be true for your pricing as well. It just happens to be the flow of money through your business. A sale comes in, you have to pay for your costs, you have to pay for the expenses of the business, and then if you're lucky, there's going to be some profit left over, and that profit's going to go towards your taxes, retained earnings, and paying you, the business owner. So keep in mind, sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals profit, because it's going to be critical as you understand your pricing as well, because if it's the flow of money through your business, it only makes sense that when you sell something, it's going to have the exact same flow of sales. So let's take a look at a fictional business. We're going to say that this business does $45,000 in sales, has $27,000 in cost of goods, had $12,000 in expenses, and had a profit of $6,000. And by knowing these numbers, we can then convert them into percentages and use that in our pricing so we can make sure that we're even more profitable going forward, or that we're not costing ourselves profit as we price the things in our business. So let's take a look at that first. The concept that you want to remember is that everything is a percentage of your sales. And the best way to look at it is this way. All of your sales equals a pie. So everything you bring in is one big giant pie. Some of that money is going to go out towards your cost of goods. Some of that money is going to go out towards your expenses. And if you're lucky, there's going to be money left over for your profits. And once again, profits go to taxes, retained earnings, money you reinvest back in the business, and for you, the owner, in an owner's draw. But every sale you do goes out in this form one way or another. For most of us, we think about that at the end of the month or at the end of the year. But the reality is with every sale you do, you're still having the same flow, and you need to set aside money into all of these categories. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do I even figure out the percentage? Well, everything is a percentage of sales, so you divide it by the sales. So if you want to know a number and you want to know a percentage, all you have to do is to take that number and divide it by the sales. So in this case, we want to know our cost of goods. And if we take our cost of goods and divide it by our sales, we're going to get a percentage. So earlier, our cost of goods was $27,000 and our sales were $45,000. So if we take the $27,000 divided by the $45,000, it tells us that our cost of goods runs 60%. And we now know in our business that 60% of our sale has to be set aside to pay our cost of goods. Typically, that's about what it is. That doesn't mean everyone is like that. It just means on average, when you add them all up, that's what they typically tend to be. So what we want to do is we want to know for our entire business, what do those numbers look like? Well, if we use the numbers that I showed you earlier with our $45,000 in sales, $27,000 in cost of goods, and our $12,000 for expenses and our profit, we can figure out that our sales are 100%, our cost of goods come out to 60%, our expenses run 27%, and our profit tends to run 13%. This is what happens typically in this particular business. And the most important number on here to see if we're priced correctly is right here, because this is the part that everybody tends to leave off. They calculate really quickly what their cost of goods are, and then they say, oh, okay, this is how much profit I'm going to make. But what they failed to do when they're looking at their pricing is knowing that a certain percentage has to be set aside to pay the bills. So in this particular case, in this business, they know that for almost every sale they do, they have to set aside 27% of that sale to make sure that they are profitable. So now this business has decided they want to add a new service and they want to check and see if they're going to price it correctly. So they happen to have a sale that they're going to do for $225. It's a new service that they're offering. They're planning on doing it for $225 and they want to know, are they going to make money? Well, they already know their cost of goods because they know that their materials are going to run them $75 and it's going to take 2 hours of labor. And we're figuring at $20, that's going to be $40 they need for the labor side of it, which gives them a total cost of goods of $115. And if they're just looking at these two numbers, they're going 225 minus 115. Wow, I'm going to make $115 when I do this. That's great. I'm almost making double. Life is good. But is it? Because I already told you the piece that people tend to leave out are those expenses. And we want to make sure that we're looking at those expenses to see, is this really still profitable? So in this particular case, we already figured out that the business runs 27% for their expenses. So we need to figure out how much they need to set aside for their expenses out of this sale. Well, if the price is going to be $225, then all they have to do is take that $225, because everything is a percentage of sales, multiply it by the 27% or 0.27, they need to set aside $60.75 from every sale in order to pay the bills, to pay the other expenses for the business. And what this is going to look like now is the sale is for $225. Their cost of goods are going to be $115, but because now we're smart and we're putting in the expenses, they have to set aside $60.75 as well. This means the real profit is actually $49.25. That's actually not bad, right? They're going to make $49. Life is good. Now they just need to figure out, does that still hit the goal of what they have for their profit? Now you might remember their normal profit is 13%, but they really want more than that because they're on a mission to get this up to 20%. And they're going to see if this has worked out to where they can hit that 20% goal that they now have in their business because they're trying to increase their profits by pricing better. Well, if we take the $49.25 and divide it by sales, because everything is a percentage of sales, so their profit of $49.25 divided by the $225 sale tells them that their new profit percentage is 21.8, which is not only beating the 13%, but it's definitely hitting that 20% goal that they have for the business. So they've done a great job. Now, for some of you, you go to run specials and you just want to say, hey, if I run this special, does it still make sense for my profitability? Because sometimes running a sale actually has the opposite. Yes, you might sell more of something, but in the end, it turns out that you actually make less money. And I want to show you why that tends to happen a lot worse than what sometimes you think it's going to, because sometimes you run a special and you end up making a lot less money than what you thought you were going to make. So let's use these same numbers to try to figure that out. So we have a product that we sell for $125. And we're going to run a special for $99. And we want to know what kind of profit we got. Well, we know our cost of goods are $75. And what that does is it comes up with $26. And what happens in a lot of people's minds, they don't even think about the expenses, right? I told you it's always being forgotten. Well, they're going, wow, I'm making $26. This is going to be great. I'm going to run this $99 special. But the problem is, what did we forget? That's right. That's not going to be their profit because they're forgetting all about their expenses. So let's see what that would look like. Well, we have to start with the original $125. Well, the original $125, we already know the cost of goods are $75. And when they've calculated out the expenses in the past, it has run about $33.75. That's typically what they have to set aside for the sale of $125. And that leaves them a profit of $16.25 whenever they're selling this $125 item. Now, they're thinking about dropping it down to $99, right? Well, they have to remember to keep in mind both the cost of goods and expenses because they're not going to change. whether they charge $125 or they charge $99, they still have to continue to set aside the money that they've been setting aside every time they sell that in order to maintain what it is that they've done. Now, there's other factors that are in there, and yes, you can build a case that the expenses might end up being a little bit less or even a little bit more, but we're just going to use the same numbers just so that we can make sure that how profitable are we really going to potentially be on this $99 thing. So let's take those cost of goods and expenses and run it with the $99. So we got sale of $99, cost of goods of $75, expenses of $33.75. Well, look what happened to the profit. We're losing $9.75. So running this special and including those expenses is actually showing that that's a horrible price for them to run a special at, because the odds are they're going to lose $10 every time they sell it. So in order to get those expenses down, they have to really sell a lot more of them just to get to the point of breaking even. And this is just because they're keeping in mind those expenses that I'm talking about that you've got to make sure you're including in your calculations when you're looking at your pricing. Now, the number one calculation, once again, sales minus cost of goods minus expenses equals your profits. These are critical for you to keep in mind as you're doing your pricing and as you're looking at it. So as you can see, what happens is when we're looking at our pricing, a lot of times all we do is we focus on that price and we think about our cost of goods, and then we assume that that's going to be our profit. Well, that's what's called gross profit. And that's gross profit is basically what you have before you pay your expenses. And when you are setting your prices based off of that, you run the risk of not setting aside enough money to pay the bills. And to me, what I always try to do is say, you want to make sure that you're priced correctly. And I don't want you to overprice or be priced wrong or be priced too high, but I want you to at least keep in mind how much money you need to take out of every sale to ensure that you're going to be as profitable as you can. Because the reason that you're not as profitable as you can is you're not keeping that in mind. And by using those percentages and knowing that, hey, if my expenses typically run 20%, 15%, 30%, whatever your expenses typically run, by you including those and looking at least about how much has to come out of every sale, it's going to make you price that much better. You're going to set yourself up for that much more profit because at least now you're aware of what it is. Now, I know this is just a quick way for you to be able to look at it. And if you want to look at it in a few other ways, I have these other videos that I'll show that will help you with this, because I've done a few of them that have a few more examples, because it's not really quick to learn, but I promise you it's very easy. It is so easy that you guys can do it in minutes. You don't even have to be a math whiz. It's just knowing that's why your P&L is so important to you, because your P&L is already telling you what your percentage is. All you got to do is take what your expenses are, divide it by your total sales. That gives you what your percentage is. Now, I don't recommend you doing it by month. Whenever you're looking at your P&L, look at your year to date, look at last year. It's going to give you a much better evened out number on your expenses, because not every expense hits every month, and your expenses will kind of go up and down based off of when you pay for things. So it's important to use that year to date one, because it's going to include everything and give you a much better percentage. And some months you might have a little bit extra, and some months you might have a little bit less based off of how those expenses fluctuate. But by the time you get to the end of the year, if you're using those expenses as part of your strategy when you're pricing, you're going to find that you start making a lot more money, because you're no longer surprised at how much comes out of every single sale. All right. With that, watch these other videos, because they're going to walk you through more on pricing, and I will keep doing more videos to help you become more profitable in your business. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, so this way that you don't ever miss any of those. All right. And with that, watch these other videos, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.